It's Adrienne Lawrence with The Conversation, right back at you. And this time I'm joined by the executive director and CEO and the co-founder of MomsRising. That's Kristin Rowe-Finkbeiner. Thank you so much for joining us, Kristin.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, so we've had this talk, we've had a lot of talk, and hopefully there will actually be some action. And I know that you brought together MomsRising to create action, particularly when we're talking about now this impact of reversing Roe v. Wade and the effect it's gonna have on American families. What do you think a lot of people are missing or misunderstanding?
Right now, a lot of people are missing the fact that 6 out of 10 people who have and need abortions are moms already. And research is showing, when you ask moms what's happening, that it's out of love and support of their family. So we really need to talk about what's happening with abortion and about bodily autonomy, knowing that everybody should be able to decide if they're going to have children, and if so, when they have children, and how many children to have.
No, absolutely. And I think a lot of people don't fully appreciate the impact that this will have, because there's this kind of notion or idea in mind that people who get abortions are individuals who were making irresponsible decisions, or for some reason are not married and haven't been living almost this Christian ideal life. Whereas this is something that can definitely impact people who are already parents, who are in marriages. And so what do you want people to understand?
I think it's time for people to understand that their voice, their story, they're reaching out to their member of Congress and to their state legislatures is more critical than ever. We're at a point where, with Roe v. Wade being overturned, a lot of the power has been turned back to the states. So we need action at all levels. We need Congress to take action. We need the president to take executive action. We need governors to take action. And we also need people to donate and contribute to local abortion care funds. We have a moment of emergency where people are going to lose their lives because access to abortion care has been rolled back in a large number of states. But abortion care is still available in many states. So if people are in crisis, they can go to abortioncarefinder.com and they can still get engaged and involved with Planned Parenthood, with NARAL, with MomsRising and others. But the time is now to really raise your voice and make those phone calls and say, our body, our choices, and really ask for that bodily autonomy to be restored.
Absolutely. And so when we are having these conversations with the moms out there and members of American families, what are you hearing people say on the ground?
People are in crisis. I mean, look, we're already in crisis because we've been in a pandemic that has become an endemic. And the data is in, and women of moms have experienced compounded health and economic harms due to the pandemic. And BIPOC women have experienced even more compounded health and economic harms. We have right now a situation where the very same elected officials who are pulling back our right to abortion care, our right to bodily autonomy, are those that are standing in the way of affordable childcare. Childcare costs now more than college. Are those who are standing in the way of access to paid family medical leave. We're the only industrialized nation in the world without paid family medical leave for a new baby or for a serious health crisis. And those who are standing in the way of maternal health. Right now, before abortion care was rolled back, we were the only World Health Organization where maternal mortality was increasing, meaning more moms were dying in childbirth, then decreasing. And when you look deeply into those stats, we're seeing that Black women are dying 3 to 4 times the rate of white women. We have a maternal health crisis. Before abortion care was rescinded, that crisis is now going to be compounded in communities who are on the edge, at risk, and experiencing structural racism already. It's a crisis. So really, it's time to also check your vote. Make sure you're registered to vote and make sure you're voting for candidates who support what really matters to families.
Yes, that would definitely seem to be something that is incredibly important also to address, in part because, as you had mentioned, when individuals were already struggling coming out of the pandemic and still dealing with these sets of almost new wave of pandemics that keep coming through, it's very scary when people don't necessarily know whether they can even access healthcare for that, and whether they are going to be able to have the healthcare access that is abortion care in and of itself. And so for people out there who are on there, those happen and don't necessarily know, what would you recommend to them outside of simply, let's say, voting or contacting a member of Congress? Is there anything else they can do?
Well, really sharing your story is so important. If you have a story of experiencing the need for abortion care yourself, or a family member, or a friend, or have been involved in healthcare for women, share your story with your friends, share your story with your elected officials, share your story with the media, with organizations, because our stories are powerful and they do 3 key things. 1, stories let us know we're not alone. We really need to share our stories so that we know that when this many people are facing the same types of crisis at the same time, we don't have an epidemic of personal failures or personal health crisis alone. We have a national structural issue that we can and must solve together. 2, stories let the media report accurately what's going on. This is not a small group of people who need access to the full suite of reproductive health care. This is over 20 million people in the United States of America. And 3, our stories let our elected leaders who do not yet reflect who we are as a nation in terms of our representation know what's happening in our lives. There should be no forced births in the United States of America. Every birthing person should be able to have access to adequate health care and shouldn't have to travel long distances or pay exorbitant amounts of money to get it. And when we think about this, we need to think about that not everybody can travel long distances. Not everybody has paid family medical leave or paid sick days or paid time off. Not everybody can take time off work. Some people are in situations where they can't let their family or their partner know that they're needing abortion care. So we need everybody, absolutely everybody, to be able to have access to the health care they need, including abortion care, where they are, when they need it, and at an affordable cost.
Absolutely, that access is so incredibly important. And it definitely seems that other leaders in other countries and nations seem to recognize that. And that they're also definitely seeing the United States as having taken a step backwards, being more regressive as opposed to progressive, yet still feeding this ideology of being a world leader. How do you think this makes us look, or how this is going to impact the United States in the long run when it comes to interacting with other nations?
It's not a good look. I mean, there has already been data out that we are regressing as a country in terms of gender equity and equality. Just looking at the measures about the policies that we have access to and what that does to us shows what's happening. So right now, already, before Roe v. Wade was overturned, being a mom was a greater predictor of wage and hiring discrimination than being a woman or gender. And moms of color experienced compounded wage discrimination due to structural racism, to the extent that Black moms are earning just 54 cents to a white dad's dollar and Latina moms just 46 cents to a white dad's dollar. This is not okay. And when other countries look at what's happening in the United States, it puts us in a bad position, not just in terms of what people think about us, but also in terms of our international competitiveness. Jerome Powell, our Federal Reserve Chair, recently said in a congressional hearing that because we don't have access to childcare, because we don't have a care infrastructure, we are losing out in international competitiveness. So when we take the full step back, and I love always taking a full step back, we can see that in our consumer fueled economy, women and moms make 3/4 of purchasing decisions. And so when we are pushed out of the labor force, when we are pushed aside because we don't have access to the full healthcare suite that we need, including abortion care, when we can't make ends meet, then we are in trouble because we are fueling the economy. We're 50% of the labor force. 3/4 of families rely on the wages of moms to make ends meet. And so then we start seeing things like supply chain issues because people are pushed out of the labor force when they can't afford childcare. We start seeing those supply chain issues increase our inflation. And one of the things that we're seeing is that moms and women and people who are birthing people are part of the solution to lifting our economy up and out of the inflation crisis that we're in right now, and halting our access to the full suite of reproductive health care makes things worse for our economy and our international competitiveness.
Absolutely, yes. And it's so interesting because there is just research on research on research confirming this. And yet we seem to be engaging in legislative action and behavior that is counter to it, which would seem entirely counterproductive. But then again, when you're talking about the white male supremacy patriarchal rule, sometimes I guess that is definitely more important than being an actual world leader. To each his own. But I know in the meantime, we definitely have to fight against it because it is a problem. But I know there are so many people, so many entities and organizations out there fighting against it. And so can you talk a little bit about your organization, MomsRising, and what you all are doing specifically to combat this reversal of Roe v. Wade?
Yeah, and I just want to take a moment to talk a little bit about this moment in time and hope. And just to tell all the listeners, all the viewers of any gender, that now is the time to embrace hope as a discipline. And hope means, to me, optimism and hard work combined. And that hard work means keep pushing, even when you read headlines in the newspaper that say, we are facing the impossible. So keep pushing. Get registered to vote, make sure you vote, and call your members of Congress. So what does MomsRising do? MomsRising is an organization of over 1 million people. We have members in every state in the nation working to increase family economic security, working to end discrimination, and to build a country where every single person can thrive. And we do that through moving 4 levers of change. The first lever of change is legislative change. Legislative change at the state and federal level to help lift families. Some of the legislation that we're happy to have helped recently pass are things like the child tax credit checks that came out in 2021 and lifted more than 40% of children out of poverty, the largest single year drop in child poverty in the history of our nation. So that's an example of the policy. Another lever of change, you won't be surprised to hear, is voter engagement change. We had over 72,000 mom volunteers helping to get out the vote in 2020 who made more than 30 million get out the vote contacts with low frequency moms. Yes, huge. And then the other lever is corporate change, and then there's culture change. So really talking about the policies, lifting up what's really happening, sharing our stories, and changing the culture so that we can see who we are as a country instead of avoid who we are as a country.
That is very, very powerful. I want to thank you so much for all the work that you do with MomsRising and starting it as well as leading it. Thank you so much. And everybody get out there, check out MomsRising, and also continue to keep hope. Thank you so much for joining us, Kristin Rowe-Finkbeiner. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.